The Ambitious Radio Network. Conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Are you an entrepreneur, startup junkie, or just someone interested in improving their leadership skills? If you're looking to be motivated, inspired, and uncover what it takes to get to the next level, listening to Ambitious Radio will be well worth the investment of your time. We have weekly engaging conversations with today's most influential thought leaders and entrepreneurs as they discuss their successes, failures, tipping points, and other priceless information that you can apply immediately after listening. Now, here's your host, Doug Parker.
All right, welcome back to Ambitious Radio and Ambitious Radio Network. Today we have quite a guest. I've been doing a little bit of research, and I'm telling you what, Paul Oberschneider is an unbelievable businessman. He's an author. He's the CEO, or the Startup CEO, I should say. He started businesses, really over the years, and he started out, he had a failed Wall Street career that was in futures and equities in the 80s, and then went on to build companies worth over $200 million, starting with only $400. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thanks. No, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well,
lead the way.
I'm always intrigued, by people that have had a lot of success, and one of the things that I've seen over the years is the more people fail, you have two choices. You can either curl up in the fetal position and cry about it, or you can just keep on going. You can fail your way to success, and it looks like you've had some ups and downs and all around. But just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, maybe your childhood, where you're from, what you're all about.
Yeah, no, sure. There's obviously a backstory to everyone's story, and I'm no exception. So, I'm from the rural cornfields of Illinois, originally back in the late 1950s. So, there you go. That tells you how old I am. And grew up in as suburbia was. People were moving out of the cities and moving into the suburbs. I mean, my hometown way back then was 500 people, and now I think it's large. It's one of the largest subdivisions of Chicago. But Dad was a small town doctor, an immigrant from Eastern Europe. So you just kind of have to remember that for a moment, because that plays into some of the circumstances that come up in my life later on. And as a young guy, I was just riding my bike in the cornfields, and that's one of the things that I remember distinctly was watching them build the first outdoor shopping mall basically outside of Chicago, which was Woodfield Mall. And I must have been about 7. I was on the back of my Schwinn bike, and I watched them put this thing up basically over the course of the year. And in the back of my mind, I said, that's something I want to do. That looked really interesting to me. But then, when you're 7, you forget these things. And I forgot about it for a long time. So it just disappeared, and I went on to follow other paths. So that's where I'm from. So I'm a boy from Illinois.
Cool. So now, it's crazy. I look around nowadays, and you talk about 7 years old riding a bicycle. And I remember growing up, I spent some time in Houston when I was a kid. And I remember riding around on my bicycle and kind of in the neighborhood, if you will. And I don't remember if I was, 5, 6, 7, something like that. Yeah. But in this day and age, if I see a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old riding a bicycle around and there's not an adult around, I'm like, where's their parent at? What's going on? Is this kid going to be okay? And it's a different world we live in nowadays, because you don't have that that kind of exploring nature. It's I don't know if it's as dangerous as it seems like it is, but it's a different world for sure.
Oh, it is a different world, but we've created that, and I think probably it's a lot less dangerous than most people think. We've just got overly sensitive to everything, and you probably were the same. We'd go out at 8:30 in the morning. We'd rush through our breakfast cereal and go outside, and we wouldn't come home until late at night. We were out all day doing stuff, and I think that in a sense, people our age, people my age, have that sense of adventure and exploration, because we were kind of left on our own and we were allowed to do things. I know my son, he doesn't have that sense. I wish he did, but he doesn't, because he goes to a different school entirely. He's a British child, and everything is different these days. And so it's sad in a way, because I think that we lived in a really good time where anything was possible.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was actually eating lunch with a young man yesterday that's 22 and doing just some mentoring, just grabbing some lunch, asking some questions, and the guy's telling me, and super nice, super, compliant, just a good kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just trying to figure out, kind of directionally what to do. He goes, because when I went to all my school growing up, when I went to college, I just, I kind of went through the syllabus. I did what it was supposed to do. I got my grade. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't have to really think outside the box, and I made pretty good grades. Now I'm out here in the real world, and it's not really so much that way. You got to go out there and find your own way. And he's like, I'm just looking for some direction, because I haven't had any direction. I think that little bicycle story really kind of ties it in of, you found your own direction. You're going through the cornfield. You figure out what you do and don't want to do. There's little seeds that got planted along the way, and lots come out of that. So, it's amazing just the difference, as we say, in the world. So let's just talk a little bit about, as you started getting, out of the cornfields and then into business, we talked a little bit about the Wall Street and having some success and then some failures there. What's some of the major obstacles that you went through during that time in the 80s?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, along with that freedom to explore and do things comes a bit of risk. And I was I had a lot of isms before I even got to the age of probably 16, 17. And it was the 1970s, it was the late 70s, going into the 80s, the bull market. If you remember, the Dow was at 700. The bull market was just starting. Gold had just dropped from $1,000 an ounce, if you could believe that, down to 200 or 300, I think. And it was a time where anything was possible and everybody was doing everything. And I got caught up in that excitement. And as a kid, my first summer job was down on the Board of Trade in Chicago. And my role models were crazy floor traders. And, that drank a lot, did lots of drugs. And so, I thought that was the right path. And so I got caught up in that. Fast forward a few years, I'm a young futures trader in New York in the early 80s, going to Studio 54, staying out all night, and basically got caught up in this whole alcohol and drugs thing. And basically it almost killed me. And so I'm like Wolf, I kind of compare myself to sort of Wolf of Wall Street meets Forrest Gump, because after that, I just kind of showed up to the party and things started to happen. But I had to go through a pretty dark place in my life on Wall Street, because I had that freedom and there wasn't anybody giving me any direction. And I was a young kid with a trading account that didn't know the value of a dollar and who didn't think that there were any barriers. And I just was like a kid in a candy store, and I couldn't handle it,
That makes, you brought up quite a few good points. I mean, number one is the people that you surround yourself by. And as a young person, you don't think about it so much. You think back to your parents saying, oh, you're hanging out with whoever, you're going to become just like them. And you're like, whatever. You don't think about it.
Yeah.
But you start talking like them. You start walking like them. Before you know it, you're doing things like them, because that is your norm, because that's what you've surrounded yourself by. And, it's obviously, luckily you figured it out and you got beyond that. And that's one of those failures that so many people, they get drugged down into and they have a hard time getting out of it. So congrats on kind of putting that behind you and getting that taken care of. Now, one question I sometimes like to ask folks is, over the last decade or so, is there anything that you can think of that you've kind of changed your mind on? That you were kind of thinking, I think this way, and then with a little more information, a little more time, you've kind of changed your mind either partially or totally just the other direction?
Yeah, I mean, probably, as you get older, you realize that nobody cares about what you're doing. You start out with thinking that everybody's thinking about you. You're worried about what your friends think. You're worried about, what your peers think about you. Then you worry about, as you get older, about what others, and then finally you get to a point where you realize, well, you know what? Nobody's been paying attention at all anyway. So, I think you just got to do things that are right for you, and don't be influenced by what you think other people think about you. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learned, is that you just gotta nobody cares at the end of the day. Everybody's worried about themselves, so they're not paying much attention to you. But we all think everyone is. So, and it prevents us from doing things because we've got, egos, and, we don't want to be humiliated. We don't want to make any mistakes. We're afraid to be wrong. And, God, raise your hand, ask the question. Nobody cares if you sound stupid.
That's really great advice. It really is, because, you look at things, and some of the world leaders, I was listening to something the other day, I think it was maybe the Slight Edge, and they were talking about how, whether it was Galileo or the different people that, at first they thought the world was flat, and these guys were like, no, I don't think that's the case. And people thought that they were crazy, and, leading up to, them, just not having any credibility whatsoever, their families being, ridiculed, but they're like, no, I think this is how it really is. And just like you're saying, I mean, the reality is, get out there, skin your knees up a little bit, get some lessons. It doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. It really matters, that you're making progress and doing things that are the best situation for you. And that's really great information for our listeners. And I appreciate you sharing it, because I know we kind of pulled back the covers a little bit on some stuff, but that's how we want to get to know you. What are you all about? And then what all are you working on? So when we get back to the next segment, we'll take a quick little break here. We're talking today with Paul Oberschneider, and Paul is an experienced businessman. He's got a portfolio of over $200 million. Started it all with $400. Now is an author, and just really out there making it happen. Great information for our ambitious listeners, and we'll be back right after a break, where we'll hear from our sponsors right here on the Ambitious Radio Network.
The RepairMyCreditNow.com story.
It's a day this family had dreamed of for quite some time. They were finally getting that brand new SUV. The salesperson at the auto dealership gave them the keys and told them to take it for the weekend. He'd prepared the documents and called them Monday morning. The kids had already installed the headrest DVD when the phone rang. Seems there was a problem with their credit they were unaware of. They'd have to return the SUV to the dealership immediately. Embarrassing, to say the least.
www.repairmycreditnow.com.
Hello, this is Doug Parker with RepairMyCreditNow.com. Do you have less than perfect credit, a repo, maybe some late payments, a collection account? Are they being reported accurately? Studies show that over 70% of Americans have inaccuracies on their credit reports. Where do you fit in? Go to RepairMyCreditNow.com for your free credit report evaluation. And remember, your credit is your future. If you want to get started now, log on now. RepairMyCreditNow.com.
RepairMyCreditNow.com. www.repairmycreditnow.com.
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and today we're talking to Paul Oberschneider. And I'll tell you what, I've just been enjoying kind of getting to know him just a little bit, but now we're going to jump into really what he's working on right now, his projects. What are some of the things some of the businesses that are part of this portfolio? And let's just jump right in. I know you've got a new book out, Why Sell Tacos in Africa. You've got a video series on the Start-Up CEO. Just tell us a little bit about what all you're working on right now.
Well, that's, really, I've built lots of shopping centers, lots of hotels and things like that. And, I'm not really, the property market for me ended in the crisis of 2008. And basically I was fortunate enough to have gotten out of most of that stuff before the crisis hit. So I was very fortunate and kind of acquired some guru status about being able to get out at the right time. But So since then, I've done lots of things. I've started a fast food chain in London, hotel projects again, mostly just turnaround, buying things in administration and turning them around, distressed asset type things. But I've had people hear my story and they're like, oh, you should write a book. You should write it. So I did, and actually I wrote 2 books. And then after I did that, I thought, well, you know what? I just can't write the book. I need to talk more about the book. So the book was more of a business card, if anything. And on the back of that, what we've started to do is create these more or less entrepreneurial, property-related courses that help people to be motivated and hopefully impart to them some lessons that I learned over 30 years. Because I had help, and why shouldn't I give other people help? So we've started to do that. We've got a program on our website, which is www.pauloberschneider.com, and there's a section there that has some of the products. So if you go on there, you'll find the book, and you can download the digital copy for free. But there's another program called Business Ignite, and that's a members program which has all kinds of things in there, like the videos and the coaching tools. And then now I'm doing a lot of speaking on the speaking circuit, and hosting a lot of mastermind events where people come to me, and we'll get a group of 20 people, and we'll pick, we've got a whole range of topics that we talk about, but it's an educational thing, really. And strangely enough, we've gotten a lot of success from a lot of inquiries from a lot of people as far away from as Africa, believe it or not. Maybe because the book title is a bit so strange, Why Sell Tacos in Africa. It's really not about Africa at all. It's really, the title is a metaphor for standing out and doing things differently in perhaps uncontested markets. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm also looking at some tech stuff in Eastern Europe, in Estonia, which is where Skype was developed. And I know a lot of guys there that develop software, so we're working on an accommodation platform. I'm looking at another restaurant chain here in London as a possibility. So I'm always looking for stuff to do. And then, of course, I'm helping the property community in and around London as a mentor. So working with a lot of younger and people kind of in their middle career.
Very good, very good. And, I do want to touch base, on the book just again. I know you said it's kind of a business card of sorts, and so many different folks that I interview, there are people they're just authors. That's what they do professionally. And then there are the entrepreneurs, the business people that write a book because they want to be a published author. And then there's all, variations in between. Now, was it always a goal of yours to write a book, or was it something that just kind of got dropped in your lap, or what did that process look like?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think everybody grows up thinking they'd like to write a book. I mean, I did too, but, it was never, it was just, it's one of those fleeting thoughts. But the reason I actually did this was for a reason that will probably slightly surprise you. And that is, I'm 58 years old, and the older I get, the more I realize that, anything can happen in life. And I've got a 15-year-old boy. And because he's 14, I'm probably the weirdest guy in the world to him. I'm just simply not cool. And so I wanted to, in case one of those unforeseen things ever happened, I just wanted to put some stuff on paper that I could share. That hopefully one day he might read. So that was the whole genesis or the ethos behind my writing this book. And originally it was going to be called something completely different. And I wanted to call it 33 Things I Wish My Father Had Told Me. But I didn't. I started to write that book, and it didn't sound right. It seemed contrived, and it didn't feel right. So I started to write my story. And at the end, it was a far different book. And then I gave it this unusual title. just to be even more different. And funny enough, my son actually has read the book. So that was the whole point in the beginning anyway. And of course he says it's rubbish. So, he doesn't, he just does, he tells me that just to rib me, I think.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
of course. But so that's how the book got written. It was for a completely different reason. It wasn't to sell. It wasn't to give away. It wasn't, it was meant for a completely different reason. And then once I'd written it, of course, it kind of took on a different dimension.
Now, you mentioned, and I think I read something about this, and maybe it's either in the book or just in description of the book, but it said in 92, I guess after you kind of had the Wall Street stuff, that you landed in Estonia with $400 in your pocket. Now, can you talk about, how do you decide that that's the place you want to go to, and then how do you take 400 and then, turn it, over a couple decades into 200 million?
Well, okay, so now we got to go back to the Illinois story again. And if you remember in the beginning, I said, remember this point, because my father was from Eastern Europe. My father came from Estonia. So that's the connection there. And he died, my dad died when I was in my teen years. So I didn't, I missed most of his life, or he missed most of mine. So I didn't know him very well. I was just a teenager when he passed away. So after I'd gone through this sort of dark period of my life and I was ready to turn my life around again, I decided to go to graduate school because I thought that was what everybody had to do to be successful. And so I applied to all these schools, and of course all these schools turned me down, except for one, and I got in one. And the funny thing about applying, and here's just a bit of a value bomb that I'll drop here. And when I was writing these essays for my school, I wrote to like 10 different schools. So I wrote about 120 essays, and they were all about the same thing. Really, you're writing the same thing over and over and over again, just slightly differently maybe for each school. But you wouldn't believe what the power of writing and scripting things on paper can do. Because, it's funny, I look at this one where these essays written, when I, probably 30, 40 years, 35 years ago. Every single thing that I wrote about in those essays has come true. And that's the power of writing. That, to me, that's the power of putting things down on paper. So I just want to park that there for a moment. So I wrote these essays. I was on my way to grad school, and I thought, okay, well, I've got a few months before I have to go. I'm going to go visit Eastern Europe, where my dad came from, try to find my roots a little bit. I put all my stuff in storage, which wasn't much because I had pretty much lost everything when I messed up on Wall Street. And I basically had about $400 to my name. I was just going for a couple of weeks. And I got to Estonia. I didn't know anybody. I didn't speak the language. I was staying, with a stranger, basically. I was in a B&B at first. And I just started meeting people. And one guy came up to me on the town square and asked me if I could write a business plan. And so, I didn't, like I said, I didn't speak the language. I didn't have any computer equipment. I mean, back then it was big computers. But I did. I went back to his flat and I helped him write this thing. And he took it to the bank and he got a loan. And he said, well, what do I owe you? And I said, I don't know, $500. And he pays me $500. Well, now I've got $900, minus a couple of hot dogs or whatever. And a few days later, his friend comes by and asks me the same thing. So I write this guy a business plan for another business. He takes the thing to the bank and he gets a loan. And he comes back and says, well, what do I owe you? Well, now I might be from Illinois, but I'm not stupid. So I say, well, you owe me $1,000. And he pays me. Well, this goes on all summer. And by the end of the summer, I've made like $100,000 and I've got it stuffed in shoe boxes. I don't even have a bank account. So I've got all this cash. And so I write to the school where I was supposed to go and said, actually, do you think you'd mind if I came next year? And they wrote back and said, yeah, of course. So this went on for like 3 years. So it was funny because back then, basically what I was doing was I was doing a very sort of low level corporate finance consulting is what I was doing. And that window of opportunity eventually closed pretty quickly. But for a while, it allowed me to, and this is when I talk about uncontested markets in my book, blue sky markets. For a while, I was the guy that could do that. And I was the only guy that was doing that. So people were coming to me left and right, and I was just kind of minting it. And that led to, of course, other things, meeting people at the bank, and that led to other things. And pretty soon, I'm flipping apartments. I'm buying things. I'm buying one-off apartments. I actually bought an apartment because I wanted to have a place to live. So I bought one and I renovated it, and I was going to move in there. But before I moved in, I thought, well, this is quite nice, actually. I should sell this. So I did. And then that led to the next one and the next one and the next one. And, before you know it, I've got a team of people doing stuff for me. And I build up this company called Oberhouse, and that turns into a real estate company over 7 different countries over 10, 15 years. And then behind that, we start developing residential. Behind that, we started developing retail and shopping centers. So, from one little thing, which was writing those business plans for Sergey on the Market Square in 1991, 2007, I'm building 3 million square feet of retail space. So, that's how it all started.
It's amazing how one thing, leads to another. And, you're going through that writing and that kind of value bomb, as you said. As soon as you said that, it got me to thinking about a time, it's probably 15 or more years ago, but I always write out my goals every single year. I start in October, and what I do is I'm looking at the current year's goals and say, hey, look, I've got 1 quarter left. Is there anything on here I need to just, grind out and get done? Is there something on here that was a crazy goal to begin with that I just need to, write it off? Is there anything that I need to carry over to next year because it's important, but I was just a little too audacious and trying to get it done this year? But as I evaluate those goals, it's amazing how there are things that were on a goal list 3 or 4 or 5 years ago that maybe I wrote them off temporarily and I didn't put them back on. And one year I remember that it was a pretty decent year, and I took my kids to Disney World. We went to Hawaii. I bought a Rolex. There was all these little seemingly random things that I did that year, but when I went back and reflected on it, I realized that those were things that were on goals from previous years that just kind of fell into place. And I had not really thought about it. There's a lot of people that talk about the secret and the power of blah 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 or whatever. And I'm not saying there's necessarily any mojo out there that like you get a front row parking space, because
it's all the same stuff.
Yeah,
it's all the same stuff. Whether you're reading The Secret or whether you're reading Think and Grow Rich, or they're all writing about the same stuff. And basically, we are, the situation that you're in today, you thought of. The circumstances that you've got in your life today, you created. So we have the power as human beings to create and script our lives. And that's what this is all about. And our brain, which is the most phenomenal piece of computer hardware you can imagine, can be programmed. The thing is that we are, as individuals, constrained by what we think others think, by what we're taught, by the ideas that others give us. And we don't allow ourselves to just, write the things that we really want written. So we compromise. I do it. I do it all the time. Everybody does it, but truly, for those that are either too smart or too stupid, that don't compromise, that just don't know any better, they're the ones that go for it. There are no limits, and they don't care, or for whatever reason. So so those things that happened in your life, those, you programmed your head, and voila, not surprising, those things appeared.
Yep, there's no question about it. And, a lot of times you say, hey, if you don't like your life, just go get a new one. I mean, it's really pretty simple. You just got to go out there and start reprogramming, start doing things differently to create a different life for yourself. The old definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So that is really some great information for our ambitious listeners. And if you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe by texting ambitious, that's the word ambitious, to 69922. Standard messenger rates apply. See the website for more details. Next, we'll be talking more to Paul about what he's really doing now. We've talked about that, but what's next and how does he plan for what's next? Right here on the Ambitious Radio Network. Hey, ambitious listeners, you hear us interviewing entrepreneurs all the time, and there's a common theme. They want to be more productive and improve their communication. As an ambitious entrepreneur, you're always on the go. So turn your mobile phone into a business phone system with Grasshopper, the entrepreneur's phone system. The Ambitious Radio Network recently partnered with Grasshopper to offer our listeners a special discount. Log on to ambitiousradio.com and click on the Grasshopper banner in the bottom right-hand corner. Get a new business number or keep your current one. Sound professional with a main greeting and multiple extensions that forwards callers to your mobile phone or others in your organization. Get a toll-free number or local number for your business with multiple extensions. Set up each extension with custom call forwarding to any phone in the world. Get your voicemails emailed to you as an audio attachment or transcribe an email. Keep business calls separate from your personal calls. Plans start at $12 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember to click on the Grasshopper banner at ambitiousradio.com for a special discount for our listeners. Join the over 150,000 small business owners that have stayed connected with Grasshopper. See how Grasshopper works? It's the entrepreneur's phone system. Turn the world into your office. Alrighty, sir, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and today we're visiting with Paul Oberschneider. And I'll tell you what, I'm loving all this information, and I talk about this from time to time. The main reason why I do this show is because I get to pick the brains of very successful people and spend an hour or so with them, and then we get to broadcast it out for our listeners to absorb as well. So it's seemingly to me a great value of my time, and I know our listeners love it as well. But let's talk a little bit about vision. I know we talked what you've done in the past, some of the projects that you've been working on, but how do you determine what's next? And then do you have anything that you've kind of casted out there over the next 12 to 36 months that are projects you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, we forget that we did what we did based on some very unique circumstances. It's no surprise that, say, for example, Bill Gates became Bill Gates because of the circumstances he was in. I think his mom was like the only person in the United States that had a computer lab of this kind that she had, where Bill would go in and program every day. So what made him different than some guy in Missouri who could have been 10 times smarter was he was in the circumstance where he had that ability to go and practice. So we kind of forget, my circumstance, for example, was I had a failed Wall Street career, but, you throw that into the bag, the fact that my father was from Estonia, so I ended up going into Estonia. It just happened to be 1991. The Berlin Wall had come down a few years earlier in 89. So, the market was wide open. It was uncontested. There are all these things. And, I don't think that if we had planned them, if you had asked me in 1991, was I going to be one of the largest retail developers in Central and Eastern Europe? I couldn't have told you that. That just wasn't part of the business plan. That wasn't part of the plan at all. These are these little steps that kind of the dots that all connect, that are easy to look at from, behind your shoulder in hindsight. But when you're out there going forward, you can't see that far ahead, because, the light only shines 10 feet in front of you. So I think that, when you've had a great success, like myself or other people, and then you exit and you try to reinvent yourself, there's too much focus on what exactly am I going to do? Because you're trying to live up to your own expectations of what you've just done, and you try to map things out. Now, so it becomes quite mechanical, and I'm not sure that works. I went through that phase, and it didn't work for me. Now, maybe other people can do it differently. And, I've got to just be more open-minded and kind of put one foot in front of the other and see where that leads me. Because I don't think there's a straight path from A to Z. I think the path kind of goes one place to another, and then you kind of get there, but you might end up someplace different. And that's what makes it fun. That's what makes the journey exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I read somewhere one time that, if it was sunshining every day, we'd live in a desert. And so it's those rainy days that, greens everything up and makes life a little bit better, metaphorically speaking there. So, the entrepreneurial journey really is a different one. And I think the comment that you made a little bit earlier about people that either are smart or too, they're too smart or too stupid. Either way, they just don't quit, and they don't listen to what other people are saying there. And, it makes a huge difference because it's about getting up and persevering and pushing through and just not letting the world kind of beat you down to where you're just in this ho-hum. I'm going to go through and do my 40 hours and I hate my job and I just can't wait to get off every night or off on the weekends or whatever. So a little different layout there, than, for an entrepreneur. So I think I'd read this too, that entrepreneurs are the only people in the world that will work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 hours a week for somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's absolutely right. And I think you've got to be a bit, I wouldn't say stupid, but you got to be a bit thick to make it all work because, if you're just too clever, you cannot overthink things. I know a lot of clever people that just haven't had the opportunities that I've had. Whereas you look at a guy like, okay, no, I know it's a movie, but the point is the same. You look at a guy like Forrest Gump, he just shows up, and things happen, but he's there, and it was the same thing in my journey. I just had to be there, and let things happen. And if you do that and you're open-minded, the door will knock, but you've got to be awake in order to answer the door. If you're not focused, if you're not awake, if you're paying attention to something else, you might not hear that door, and so you won't open it. And that's the sad part. So, if you're too clever and you're thinking about, I can't do this, then you create all this noise and you won't hear the knock on the door. So I think you got to be a bit thick, but you got to be awake, because I'm not the cleverest person in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And what I was able to accomplish those years, in my opinion, was because of the unique circumstances that are me and that were part of my life at that time. So trying to replicate that again won't work because the circumstances have changed, and I'm a different person.
And when you talk about the people that are in your life or were in your life, are there any specific people that you follow or books that you like to read or listen to that, you're able to glean information from that our listeners might be interested in as well?
Well, I try to read, yes and no. I mean, I try to read a lot of stuff, and I've always got about 3 or 4 books sitting next to my bed that I'm dipping in and out of all the time. And, one always happens to be a book on history of some sort. I love history. And then the rest of them, there's probably always a sort of a spiritual type of book that sits on my desk. And then there's always a business book. So I'll be between those 3 kind of core themes. I try to read every night. But there are the when I was first starting out, I tried to read as many biographies as I possibly could, and but I don't do that anymore. anymore. That was then. Today I'm looking for more specific answers to things. Is there a particular book? One of the books that jump out at me all the time is this book that everybody kind of reads but doesn't talk. Think and Grow Rich. That's a great book. I'll tell you another great book that probably doesn't get a lot of airtime is a book called 50 Years of the Golden Rule, written by J.C. Penney. I don't even know if that's in print, but that's a fabulous book about his journey. Here's a guy that built up, 1,200 retail stores around America and was living high on the hog, and then the stock market crash and the banks wanted all his loans due in the Great Depression. And he basically had to start all over again and went through a really testing period where he found his faith. And then of course now we know J.C. Penney became one of the biggest retailers in America eventually. So I love inspirational books like that because I read them and it inspires me to do great things when I read that other people have done the same.
Absolutely. And all the different books that we mentioned here, all the different things, we're flying through it, and a lot of people may be driving down the road listening right now. The reality is they can go to ambitiousradio.com, and you can just type in Paul there, and we'll pull up his episode. And all the show notes, we'll put all these books and the different links to his website and all the recommendations that he's had throughout the show. Lots of great information. And as soon as we get back from this, one more quick break here, we'll hear more from Paul and the things that he does to recharge his ambitious body, mind, and spirit right here on the Ambitious Radio Network. Are you tired of paying too much for electricity from the former monopolies and getting terrible customer service? Do you really even know how much you're paying per kilowatt? Sometimes they quote you a lower rate, but then add back in the delivery charge. Ugh, how frustrating. Go to electricity.guru, that's right, .guru, for your free analysis. Who knows, with just a few referrals, you could actually earn free electricity. If you're tired of paying outrageous electricity bills, do something about it. Would you like to get a significant discount or even get free electricity? Go to electricity.guru and compare our rates to what you're currently paying. Many of our clients are saving anywhere from 15 to 20%. We also have a referral program that allows you to earn free electricity. Yes, free electricity. And you cannot beat free cents per kilowatt. Award-winning service, competitive rates, and low deposits, if even required. Go to electricity.guru for more details. That's electricity.guru. We offer free energy credits to customers who refer and activate 15 or more qualified customers to our electricity service and are not passed due on their bill. To get your free energy credit, your customers must be referred through the free customer gathering website. See electricity.guru for more details. All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and today we're talking to Paul Oberschneider, and I've been blown away. I've been taking all kinds of notes. I think I'm up to about 20 little golden nuggets that he's dropped as I go through and put the show notes together. Of course, we'll put those on there for you as well, but now we're at the kind of close of the show. You're an ambitious guy. You've been all around the world. You're from Illinois, but now I think you said you're living in London, right? Okay. Yeah. And so had a time in Estonia and just really have done a lot of things, but being ambitious, going all the time, can take a toll on you. So what is it that you do to recharge your ambitious body, mind, and spirit?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that probably I would not be able to do what I do without having pretty much a strong faith in a spiritual presence outside myself. So, the first thing I do in the morning, and, I don't mean to get corny on you, but, the first thing I do in the morning is I drop down on my knees and I pray for direction. And, the last thing I do in my day is I drop down on my knees and I thank God for my day. And I've been doing that for 30 some years. And it can all go wrong. But if I start and end my day like that, then somehow I'm able to get up and do it again the next day. And I'm able to sleep at night. I've been through some patchy times and some tough times, and I sleep like a baby. I sleep 8-9 hours a night, and I have done that for some 30 some years. So, I get a good night's rest every night. I start and end my day like that, and then of course now I'm very, very conscious of what I put in my body. I used to be, I love Mexican food. I love big steaks. I love French fries. I love burgers and all that. But I have to be far more measured now than I ever used to be. So that doesn't mean I don't have all those things. I just can't have them all the time, and I need to really just be careful. The same thing with coffee. I just try not to drink too much of it. Especially not the coffee you buy at coffee chains, which they fill up with milk. So I'm really sensitive about what I put inside myself. I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked in 20 years. And so, and I've got a wife who's a very healthy eater, and reminds me, the things I need to be thinking about. So there's all that, and I think you kind of put all that together, and you get good exercise. Then and I love being outside. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do. I'm involved a lot with horses and things, so I'm outside quite a bit, and I think that's important.
So, you said you've got the bookends of the praying in the morning, the praying in the evening, and you mentioned your wife giving you some nudges on the things you should and shouldn't be doing. I was actually at church this weekend, and our pastor was talking about how that your spouse, whether it's your husband or your wife, which which direction you're going there, were put in your life because they're closer to you than anybody else, and they see all your flaws, and they help to knock off the rough edges. And it seems like they're nagging, or it seems like it's like, would you please stop telling me what to eat? I'm a big boy or whatever. But they have a way of, sharpening you and knocking off those rough edges. And, I'll share that, with our listeners as well, because I know that, I sometimes will have somebody tell me something, and it's no problem. But if my wife tells me that, I'm like, I don't want to hear that from you. But it's one of those kind of things that can really, really help out. Now, you mentioned you get about 8 or 9 hours of sleep. Do you try to have a standard time that you go to sleep and wake up? What does that rhythm look like?
Well, I'm a late night person. My dad was a late night person. I think it's kind of in my DNA. So I'm not, first of all, I need to read. If I don't read before bed, I can't go to bed. So I need to calm myself down. So I need to read something, and then I go to sleep. But I'm usually asleep by 11 o'clock every night, and and I'm up by 8. Now that seems like a lot of sleep, but I need it. I can go with far less, but I don't use an alarm clock. I don't like being woken up by an alarm clock. I just wake up naturally, and that's the amount of sleep that this guy's body needs. And when I get up, I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go.
For those that can do that, I applaud you. I have an alarm clock, but I never, it goes off every morning, but I'm always already awake. For whatever reason, I wake up like at 5:30 every morning, and my alarm's at 6. So I just kind of ease into my morning, I'm kind of processing through what does it look like, but I don't stay up late, so I go to bed about 9. So, a little different rhythm, but still, I couldn't imagine. I can't. I remember the days whenever I was in, maybe it was in school and those kind of things, and your alarm goes off and it's like, and it's like the most annoying. You wake up upset and want to hit somebody, and it's just a different kind of a deal there. Now, when you do some traveling and those types of things, do you have favorite places that you like to travel and visit?
Oh, I love sunshine and I love the beach, and I don't get enough of it being in England. So I always I like being in hot, humid climates. That's my favorite. So I'd be right at home in Dallas, by the way. I think that's or Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. Houston's a little more humid than us, but.
Yeah. No, I'd be in heaven there. So the hotter it is, the greater the sunshine, the happier I am. But I do need water. I love beaches and things like that. So, so I like traveling to those kinds of places. I don't typically like traveling too much, and I like being in my own bed in my own home. So it always takes me, when I go someplace, it always takes me about a week to get comfortable. So if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to go for a few weeks, because if it's just a week, it just disorients me. Yeah.
Very good. No, and that makes sense. It's those rhythms. That's one of the things I've found over the last, probably, 8 years or so. It's all about the rhythms that you're in, and it's getting a consistent rhythm, whether it's sleep, eating, people you're around. It's those cycles or those rhythms, and staying in a good spot that makes all the difference. Now, we're getting very near to the end of the show, and so I always, like to just kind of close it up by, asking, are there, if someone wanted to engage with you, I know you've got the book, you've got the videos, what's the best way to engage with you? Are you social out there on the internet?
Oh yeah. Facebook, LinkedIn, but the easiest way to get to me is, and I'm easy to get to, is if you go on my website, which is www and then all one word, Paul Oberschneider, and that's OBERSCHNEIDER.com. There's a section there, a contact me section, and if you fill that out, I'll either email you or I'll call you. So it's there for a reason. You can schedule an appointment on there. So it just depends. It depends, what kind of interaction you want. And then, of course, my book's there and my program's there. And so that's the best place to go.
Very good. Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I always learn, from all of the guests, and I know that our listeners do as well. We get lots of feedback of the nuggets that are shared. So we appreciate you carving out time halfway around the world, or whatever it is, a third of the way around the world, tuning in and being with us today. And you mentioned Skype, which is a lot of times how we do these things. That was created in Estonia. So this technology is unbelievable. But thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate your time today, sir.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me. It was really great to connect. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And thanks to our sponsors. Ambitious Radio could not do it without you. Tune in Saturdays. That's right, Saturdays now to Ambitious Radio, where we interview thought leaders and exciting entrepreneurs changing the faces of their organizations. Remember, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you cannot make both. So go out there and be ambitious.
Thank you for listening to the Ambitious Radio Network, hosted by serial entrepreneur Doug Parker. Join us weekly as we have engaging conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders on topics that can be applied immediately after listening. Like what you've heard? Listen to other interviews at ambitiousradio.com or subscribe on iTunes.